just heard the Trump administration's response to the Minneapolis shooting as residents there struggle to come to grips with what happened. And the rest of us wonder if anyone has a plan to stop the next shooting. With us now is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She represents the district where this shooting happened. Congresswoman, you just heard Sebastian Gorka zeroing in on the fact that this shooter was transgender. What is your reaction to what he said and what is echoed by so many in the Trump administration?
I mean, it's really unfortunate that we have people, like him speaking on this. You know, at one moment he talks about the fact that the evil, murderous person who took two angels from us and harmed our community for a really long time. He talked about their transgenderness, and then he says that shouldn't really matter. At one moment, he attacks you for fake news in addressing actual statistics. Another moment, he talks about needing, mental health support, making sure communities have threat assessment. You point out that DHS has taken away those resources, and our communities don't have that kind of support. And then he screams at you and says it's not the responsibility of the federal government to assist the states. These people are all over the place because they want to deflect from the reality, which is that there was someone who came in to that school through the window and assassinated two beautiful angels as they prayed and put 14 other children in the hospital who are still fighting for their lives. And it is important for us to make sure that we are offering a slew of solutions. One is to make sure that we are getting rid of assault weapons in our community. Two, that we are addressing mental health issues if there are some. And yes, as a community, it is important for us to say something when we see something, when somebody is exhibiting signs that there could be a problem ahead, that we talk to them, that we get them the assistance they need, and that, yes, we do alert law enforcement. But this is not the moment to point fingers at people. It is time for us to come together and figure out what the actual solutions are so that there are no more dead angels in our communities.
You are calling for this assault weapons ban, which is something that Democrats have pushed for years. But even when your party has had control of the White House and both chambers of Congress, they still can't get this done. They couldn't get it done when Barack Obama had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Why is that, and why should voters think it would be any different if Democrats had control again?
Well, I do hope that this moment is not about Democrats or Republicans, that this is not about our political ideology, but it is about figuring out how do we safeguard the lives of our children. You know, Brianna, as a mother, I know that my youngest one, who's still in public school, worries about an assailant coming into her school and taking her life or the life of her friends and classmates. I know that the parents that have experienced this horrific attack are never going to forget that moment. Some of the children that have been impacted have younger siblings and older siblings who will carry this moment with them. This is about us as Americans coming together, saying this is not the kind of trauma that we want to continue to experience. I think the problem is that we oftentimes look at this issue as a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. We ask, each side to have an opinion. But this is about our children. Our children don't have a political ideology. They deserve the right to grow up, to be adults, to raise their own children and contribute to the future of this country.
That funding that we were talking about, the DHS funding cut, was to shooting prevention programs in Minnesota ahead of this attack. The effect may be very much more future-leaning than affecting the past here, but you were one of 6 Democratic lawmakers who called for that funding to be restored. On Friday, a DHS spokesperson defended the cut, saying that it was nothing more than a slush fund for left-wing ideologies. What is your response to that? Can you explain how that money was actually used?
Yeah, I mean that money is the kind of money that goes to fusion centers to make sure that they are identifying threats and sharing information. That's the kind of money that our county sheriff's office might utilize. That's the kind of money that MPD, our police department, might be able to utilize to hire an analysis, to look at the data, to look at where there might be vulnerabilities. We're also talking about resources that go to schools and places of worship to make sure that they have the ability to fortify, that they have the ability to look at where their vulnerabilities are, maybe have cameras around. This is a resource that we've been fighting for a really long time to try to make sure that we up the amount of resources that are available, because we have seen a huge uptick in the last 20 years or so in attacks to our schools, to our public venues, and especially places of worship. There are people who are talking about the fact that this is, in Minnesota, the first time that we have experienced a Catholic church, a Catholic school, being targeted. And it is important that that community now has the ability to have the kind of resources that mosques and synagogues and other places of worship over the years have been able to access. As threats are posed on our communities, we have to be willing to say, here's some resource that you can utilize to make sure future harm doesn't come to you. And others who are afraid to go about their day know that their place of worship or their school now has future resources that they can rely on, because as people of faith, it is really important that we do everything that we can to safeguard that ability for people to show up to worship without fearing death.
Congresswoman, we are out of time, but I just want to ask you really quickly before you go. You hear Sebastian Gorka and others zeroing in on this transgender issue. I know Democrats look at that. They say it's not in good faith. At the same time, is it perhaps important to look at whether that was a factor in this shooter's motivation?
I've always said it's really important for us to look at every factor so that we can understand what happened, what signs were missed, and have the ability in the future to prevent these kind of senseless deaths.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, thank you so much for being with us.